Hi, and welcome back to It Figures. Tonight, I have something I've been really excited to review for you guys, and it is the original Star Wars action figures that came out way back in the 1980s. Of course, obviously, these are not the original, because there's a big, huge sticker here that says Retro Collection Series, but the sculpts are the original sculpts from the original release. Now, out of all the figures I have collected over the many years that I've been collecting, Star Wars is probably the franchise that I have the most figures of. I have hundreds and hundreds of action figures from the series. But what I don't have are these. I don't have the original Star Wars. Of course, back in the day I did, and I had every one of these. So when they actually decided to release these again, I was like, oh my god, I'd love to have the original Star Wars figures, even though they're not the original. And this is the closest thing I probably would ever be able to get to it without paying a fortune, which I am completely fine with. Alright, so today I'm going to be reviewing two of them, and then tomorrow I'm going to review the last of the ones that I have. So I'm going to review the bad guys here first. I actually got these at a place when it was open called V-Stock, now that every place is closed. And it was $13, and I thought, oh, that's kind of expensive for a Star Wars figure, especially like a retro one. But then I started looking them up, and these guys are pretty expensive now. They go around between 20, even $30 some places. So I actually went back and I bought all of them except for one, because I still have my original one, which hopefully I can find for you and show to you with my next review. Okay, so packaging-wise, it's awesome because it's, the original packaging from the Star Wars. And they did scuff up the corners and stuff here, so it looks like it's aged, so it doesn't look like it's brand new. So it's supposed to be all retro. And I guess one of the reasons why they did that was so people who are wanting to buy the original figures would know, oh, well, this was scuffed up, so this is not the original packaging. If it was the 1970s, 1980s, and you were walking into the stores, this is what you'd be seeing on the shelf. This is what would be hanging on the shelf in your local Kmart's or Targets or wherever it is that you would shop back then. And that's what's so really cool about this, is the packaging. And of course, all these collectors that are getting this will probably leave it in the packaging. But you know what? Here on It Figures, we don't do that. We open every single figure. The Stormtrooper has always been, and still is, one of my favorite looking Star Wars characters and figures. I just love the clean black and white look of the character. And they actually captured it pretty dang well here in the figure. Now, for this being like one of the first runs of the figures ever, I think it looks really great. Of course, articulation-wise, he has none. His head is basically sculpted to the chest, so there is no turning of the head. His arms move up and down, but it's sort of like, Frankenstein. His elbow joints don't exist. His elbows do not bend. The same that goes with the knees, they also don't bend. However, back in the 1970s, when these figures came out, it didn't matter, because we had something from Star Wars, and it was amazing to actually own a figure from Star Wars. So like I was saying, it's actually pretty nice. It's pretty good representation of the Stormtrooper. And for me, because of this version of it, I always thought that the helmet was black and white, because that's how they have it here on the actual figure. It wasn't until, I don't know, a couple years later, I realized it's not all black and white. It actually does have color. I think these are gray back here, and there's some other coloring going on in the face. And of course, the mouth up in this area isn't painted, it's just a sculpt. But as the midsection and the belt and everything, it looks really great. And one thing that I've always loved about these guys, and I don't know why, is the hands. I think the hands, always just thought they were cool that they had the white and the black gloves. I just really, really like that look to the Stormtrooper. So down here on the knees, the sculpting is actually pretty good. It has like sort of the raised, whatever this is, onto the knee, and over here too. So, and the one leg is actually different than the other leg. They could have made them completely the same, but they decided not to. So on the back of the Stormtrooper, you have his belt and his little, whatever this is, his little utility belt. and he has his square here. And for whatever reason, when I was a kid, I always thought this said oil. I was like, he has an oil pack on his back. Why does he always have an oil pack? And to this day, I still don't know what that is. So he comes with one weapon, and it's his blaster. And once again, they did a pretty good job on this. They sculpted it pretty well to the film. It looks pretty nice. So the gun doesn't fit into his hand too well, because his hand is actually open too wide. So you try to put it in there, and it just kind of falls out. I mean, it barely stays in there, but if you actually move it over to one grip here, it stays in there a little bit better. So if you wanted to have him hold it like this, he has a much better grip on it, but I don't think that's how the Stormtroopers actually held their guns. Up next is everybody's favorite bad guy, including me, and getting this guy back in the 70s. I mean, getting Darth Vader, getting an action figure of Darth Vader, just kind of blew our minds back then. It's like, oh my god, now we have something from the film that we can actually, make our own adventures of. And just like the Stormtrooper, they did a really good job on his sculpt. So let's open him up and take a look at him. So here he is, Darth Vader. And first off, again, the sculpt is really good. I mean, it looks like Darth Vader. I mean, there is no looking at this guy and be like, oh, hey, who is that guy? No, it is Darth Vader. And one thing that's really cool that they kept here with the retro one, of course they would have to, being it's supposed to be the original one, is the plastic cape. And even as a kid, I thought the plastic cape was pretty cool. I mean, it would have been nice to have a cloth one, so the plastic one wouldn't, tear so easily. But it's really awesome to actually have him back with the plastic cape on again. So the detail-wise, he does have like the lines that are going down his arm into his glove. And of course over here is you have the lightsaber, which is kind of pinkish, not so much red. And even as a kid, I really never understood why it was the way it was on here. It was a pretty inventive and cool idea, even back then, to do the beam this way of the lightsaber, where you just push this lever, and of course the beam comes out of the lightsaber. But also, I still don't understand, I'm sure there's an explanation of it somewhere, of why this little tip was on the end of it. I guess maybe they thought that if it was pushed in like this, it's not so obvious that it's coming out of his hand. I don't know. But when you pull it all the way out, the length of it still isn't the actual length of a lightsaber. I mean, it's not as long as it should be. But still, it's just kind of weird that this little tip was on here. And I think, as a kid, I probably cut that off. I think I just cut it off and had the regular lightsaber, because I never really understood that, or it eventually just bent and fell off. Now, as for the rest of him, it's, again, pretty well done. You can see all the electronics on his chest, and they're pretty accurate to the film, and he even has the belt on here. And his clothes, just like the film, are, the stripes on here. He does have the boots, too. One thing I like about the cape is it kind of folds down over his back. And I mentioned the face sculpt before. It's a really nice looking Darth Vader. It really is. His head actually does turn on here, though. Unlike the Stormtrooper, it's not part of his chest. But also like the Stormtrooper, of course, he doesn't have any articulation in his elbows. But, back when we were playing with these back in the 70s, didn't really need them. I mean, it was just our imaginations that really drove the stories. Okay, so let's take a look at the good and the bad of these figures. The only bad I can think of with the Stormtrooper here is he doesn't really hold his gun very well. And that could have been, like from the original one, it might have been the same way, where you put the gun in his hand and it just kind of like... not that he could shoot anything anyway, but it just kind of falls out. So the good here is the sculpt, the paint, and it is the original mold, as far as I can tell, from the original figure. And the thing is, it's so good, it's one of those things like, well, how can you just not give this to somebody and say, look, it's a pristine original Stormtrooper from the 1970s. Well, I think they have like this print on his leg here. I'm not sure what it means, but it probably wasn't on the original one. One of them probably was, one of them wasn't. So it's sort of a stamp here saying, oh, hey, this is not an original figure. But yeah, he is really good, and I love it, and I think it's awesome that I actually have the original Stormtrooper again. The same thing goes with Darth Vader. I think Darth Vader's sculpt is really great. I love the classic lightsaber again, having that, and having this plastic cape is great. I think I really miss actually having these for the new figures. I mean, the new figures are cloth, and they're trying to improve them and everything. But there's something just about, you know, the classic figures that are really nice. With the overall, I could not be more satisfied with these figures. I am just so happy that I have the original Star Wars figures again, because mine mysteriously disappeared somewhere, and to this day, I have no memory of what I did with them, where they went to, what happened to them, and I do have 2 of the original figures, and that's it. Actually, I think I have 3. And all of them that I used to have, including these 2, are gone. So it is so awesome to actually own them again, and not just have them kind of sort of reproduced, but have them reproduced exactly the way they were back in the 70s. Hopefully you guys liked this review, and if you did, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because I shall return tomorrow with another collection of Star Wars retro figures here on It Figures.